they've been doing this for now a quarter of a century. Delay the vote, intimidate Democratic areas, and try to steal an election like they did in 2000. So they're like, look, it worked before, why not?
A network of Republican billionaires have funneled more than $140 million into dozens of so-called election integrity groups that are aiming to contest voter registrations and make it more difficult for people to cast their ballots in this upcoming presidential election. Now, this was a giant piece written by the Wall Street Journal, not a liberal outlet or publication. And what they found was that the billionaires behind this effort are actually big money donors to Donald Trump. So here are some of them. Groups linked to the U-Lines. The Wisconsin shipping billionaires have donated more than $34 million since 2020 to organizations that do election integrity work. And election integrity work is a bit of a euphemism here, so let's just be clear about that. A foundation funded by donors, including David Green, the Hobby Lobby billionaire, has given $7 million to nonprofits in a network of groups operated by conservative judicial activist Leonard Leo, gave more than $4.7 million. So these are some of the figures, the billionaires behind this. You probably recognize their names if you're politically engaged, because again, they're the same individuals who have been financially supporting Donald Trump. Now, so what exactly are these groups trying to do? What are they trying to accomplish here? Well, the Wall Street Journal sums up their goals as follows. The groups have been scrutinizing voter registrations on an industrial scale and working to slow down the vote count, bury local election officials in paperwork and lawsuits, and elect like-minded politicians at the state and local levels who will support efforts to contest the vote. And much of the Wall Street Journal's report also focuses on Conservative Partnership Institute, which runs the Election Integrity Network. And again, I do election integrity in air quotes because, I mean, look, I gotta give the right wing some credit on how good they are at branding. Because, you hear something like defund the police and it turns people off. Whereas with Republicans, they like to use euphemisms that make people think, oh, this is a great organization, right? Focus on the family. I like families. Election Integrity Network, that sounds great. I like election integrity. Anyway, but the head of the Election Integrity Network is Cleta Mitchell, a longtime Republican election lawyer who participated in the January 2021 phone call in which Trump pressed Georgia's Secretary of State to find some 12,000 votes for him so he could flip the state of Georgia from supporting Biden in the election to supporting Trump.
Yeah, so let me tell you the real reason behind this. So are there true believers who really think, oh my God, Trump won the election last time and I'm not gonna let them cheat him this time, et cetera? I would say not only are they actual true believers, but almost all of the grassroots Trump supporters that are involved in this, I believe, do really believe it, right? Mm-hmm. And I think even some of the leaders like Patrick Byrne, the Overstock CEO guy, believes it, right? And so, and he spent a lot of money doing that. And so I think that they, the supporters got lied to through right-wing media, et cetera, who've now had to pay now combined almost billions in damages for lying on air about people. But I think that there are some that are actually unbalanced, like Byrne, who believe it. But that's not the interesting part, guys. The interesting part is the Republican leaders who don't believe that there was any voter fraud, don't believe that Donald Trump won. So why are they doing this? Their real reason is twofold, and it's super interesting. Number one is delay the vote on the day of, especially in Democratic areas. So if Democrats get frustrated and there's longer lines, some of them will go home. That'll give you a slight advantage, right? And so if you, for example, in Georgia, what they did was they asked for a hand count before they actually give you the results. Well, that'll slow the results down massively. I love hand recounts, I got no problem with them. I wanna verify the vote, right? But you do them afterwards, that makes sense. But if you slow it down, you get a second advantage. Because usually, and this happened certainly in 2020, Trump has day of voters advantage, Democrats have mail-in voting advantage. So the day of ones usually get announced, and Trump says, I'm leading. And then the ones that are not coming in from the Democratic areas, et cetera, it gives them time and space to do their marketing, saying Trump's already won, Trump won, Trump won, Trump won, no matter who won, right? There's a second issue here. They're going, oh, and this one's even bigger. Oh, we are so concerned about voter fraud. That is why we had to take voters off the rolls in Democratic areas. Well, did you do it evenly in the whole state, in Republican areas and Democratic areas? If you're concerned about voter fraud generally? No, I just did it in Democratic areas because you're not concerned. You are the voter fraud. This entire project, its point is to try to get as little Democrats to vote as possible, get more Republicans to vote, and third thing is put a whole bunch of people at the stations. They're allowed to do that. They should verify the vote. Both sides, Republicans and Democrats, do have poll watchers, and they should, right? But these guys are saying, let's bring in an army of extra people, sometimes, as Trump says, sometimes cops. Why? To bully and intimidate people in Democratic areas. They're not bringing them to the Republican areas. They're only bringing them to Democratic areas and having them watch over them. Oh yeah, which way you're gonna vote, huh? Who are you? Do you have your papers? So they can bully as many people out of the polls as they can. And that is the voter fraud.
You know, but I'm noticing something else that I don't know if this is connected to it. I don't know if there is an intention here to make people question how long it might take to count the votes, but I'm already seeing on social media, you know, when it comes to some of the states who have noted that it's gonna take them a little longer to count the votes and you're not gonna find out if, you know, either candidate won that state on the day of the election. You know, right-wing voters are getting riled up about that. They think that there's some sort of foul play. So if you have this group that's gonna make counting the votes take even longer, isn't that going to lead to even more, you know, suspicions among the Republican base?
Because they want those suspicions. And look, I was gonna say, to be fair to the Republicans, this is a hilarious way of being fair to them, but it's true. Remember, this is exactly how they stole the 2000 election. Bush hadn't actually won Florida when the press later did a recount of Florida. It turns out Gore had won, not just the popular vote, the electoral college, right? But they pretended that Bush won. Fox News led that parade. It was a brilliant move by Roger Ailes at the time, who ran Fox News. Remember, they sent the Brooks Brothers mafia mob to Miami, and a bunch of Republican consultants pretended to be real concerned citizens, and they started beating, and then they were all dressed as preppies and stuff, and then people identified, oh, that's this Republican consultant, that Republican consultant. So they've been doing this for now a quarter of a century. Delay the vote, intimidate Democratic areas, and try to steal an election like they did in 2000. So they're like, look, it worked before, why not? Maybe if it's in close elections, we steal them. And then while we pretend that we're stopping this steal. I bet they had a great laugh over that in Republican leadership circles as they're drinking their, martinis. We'll pretend we're stopping this deal, and then we're against election manipulation, and then we'll bully and threaten and alienate Democratic voters and make sure they don't do it. And then, by the way, the joke is on the American people, but also even their own supporters who actually believe it and who get super mad. Millions of them still think that Trump won the last election. They've been furious ever since. Are the Republican leaders worried about that? No, because they think that those are pawns to use to gain power.
A lot of people do vote by mail, and Trump has changed his messaging on voting by mail, which is good because he realized, oh wait, it's actually kneecapping me. I'm kneecapping myself by discouraging people to vote by mail. So there's record early votes, for instance, in states like Georgia. And for those who are concerned about this story, and you should be, I mean, it is concerning. You don't want voters to feel intimidated by poll watchers or things like that. But as Cenk alluded to earlier in this segment, the Harris campaign is gonna deploy their own poll watchers. Let's go to the very last graphic here. The Harris campaign expects to field tens of thousands to act as poll watchers on election day and count observers afterward, as well as to staff hotlines dispensing legal and voter protection expertise. So it looks like the Kamala Harris campaign is prepared for at least something. That's good to know.
Yeah, I guess. Let's see what happens. So by the way, should we strike back and should we bully Republicans out of voting in Republican areas?
I'm not saying that.
Hold on, no. I'm just asking it as a hypothetical. And my answer to that is, of course not. Like the thing is, I'm such a sap that I actually believe in democracy. And I think if the Republicans win, they should be in charge. And I value the democracy part more than the Democrats winning part, right? I don't often see that from the Republican side. A lot of them have Cersei Lannister's attitude of power is power. Okay, well, if you don't believe in democracy, just own up to it. And that leads me to the last point, which is Cleta Mitchell that Anna mentioned earlier. He's a huge part of this, making sure that there's no voter fraud. He was on the call with Donald Trump when they were trying to intimidate Georgia Republicans into finding 12,000 votes for Donald Trump. Well, that's kind of the king of voter fraud. Exactly. When you say, I lost, so go pretend to find 12,000 votes for me, which is exactly the number of votes I need to swing this election. So the guy who was helping to orchestrate the largest voter fraud in our lifetimes is pretending to be concerned about voter fraud.
Exactly.
Hey, thanks for watching that video. We really appreciate it, guys. And we appreciate it if you become members, because that allows us to be independent, honest, progressive, all the things that you don't get from corporate media. And all of that is because of you guys. Hit the join button below and become one of us, become a young Turk.